Hi everyone, my name is Francesca Ferrando. I teach philosophy here at NYU, Program of Liberal Studies, and I'm very excited to keep our conversation going on about the Posthuman Divine. I would like to thank very much the Fondazione Bruno Kessler for offering me this important opportunity, and also would like to thank Boris, Valeria, Isabella, the director, for making this event happen. Thank you so much. So we're talking about the Posthuman Divine. This is the second part of my talk. In the first part, we have discussed different topics. Specifically, we have addressed two questions. The first question that we have addressed is, are we becoming God or are we becoming gods? And we have addressed this question through the philosophy of transhumanism and the call for human enhancement. We've also addressed the question, are we actually playing God or playing gods? I'm using singular and plural to the notion of God, not to refer to a specific tradition of the divine, but to try to comprehend all the different approaches that have been developed historically to reflect on the notion of God. So we have addressed the question, are we playing God, through the bioconservative ethics and specifically the call against human enhancement and more specifically the call against transhumanism. Keep in mind that, for instance, bioconservative ethicist Francis Fukuyama defined transhumanism as the most dangerous idea of the 21st century. So definitely there is a lot of emphasis on the discussion, are we playing God? Yes, we are. We should not do that from a bioconservative perspective. So the question that we are going to address in this talk is, are we being gods right now? We're going to address this question through the philosophy of posthumanism, specifically philosophical posthumanism. And we are going to address philosophical posthumanism in its specific definition as a post-dualism. We're also going to address in this second part of our talk the question, are we killing God? And we are going to delve into this question through anti-humanism and a tradition developed through Michel Foucault and following Friedrich Nietzsche and the question of the death of God. Are we killing God? Is God dead? So let's go to our first point. Are we being gods right now? If posthumanism and transhumanism share a common interest in technology, the ways in which they reflect upon this notion is divergent. Transhumanism offers a deep and visionary reflection on technology, which should be cherished by anyone interested in exploring the current, emerging, and speculative potentialities of technology. Some of its limits, though, are found in the uncritical perpetuation of anthropocentric and dualistic tendencies, which may lead to technocentric biases and delusions. We have talked about this in the first part of our talk, the idea that transhumanism is still very anthropocentrism based on the idea of human exceptionalism. So the posthumanist critical reflection on technology may add some other layers of understanding. So why is technology relevant to the discussion on posthumanism? The historical and ontological dimension of technology is a crucial issue when it comes to a proper understanding of posthumanism. Yet, posthumanism is a post-centralizing, in the sense that it does not recognize one specific center of interest. Posthumanism sees technology as a trait of the human outfit, but not its main focus, which would reduce its own theoretical attempt to a form of techno-reductionism. Technology, according to posthumanism, is neither the other to be feared and to rebel against, in a sort of neo-Luddite attitude, nor does it sustain the God-like characteristics which some school of thought in transhumanism attributes to it, addressing technology as an external source which may guarantee humanity a place in post-biological futures. We've addressed this point in part number 1 of our talk. The fact that, again, according to some transhumanism, technology is the golden key to, for the future, to access post-biological futures. So what transhumanism and posthumanism do share is the notion of technogenesis. As Catherine Hayles points out, quote, technology is involved in a spirally dynamic of co-evolution with human development. This assumption, known as technogenesis, seems to me compelling and indeed virtually irrefutable. End of quote. So the non-separateness between the human and the techno realm is of key importance to the understanding of philosophical posthumanism. Here we should ask the question, what is philosophical posthumanism? I like to address philosophical posthumanism in 3 different layers, which are post/humanism, post/anthropocentrism, and post/dualism. A little parenthesis here, my book, actually entitled Philosophical Posthumanism, is coming out in May 2019, published by Bloomsbury, and in the book I address specifically and constantly these 3 layers of philosophical posthumanism. Now, it is true that the first 2 terms, post/humanism, which means that the human is not one but many, and the plurality of being human, and also post-anthropocentrism, that is not having the human anymore at the very center of the discourse, but really thinking of non-human animals, the biosphere, the planet. So it is true that these 2 layers are very much being developed within the field of posthuman studies. We can think, for instance, of Rosi Bredotti's book, The Posthuman. 2 chapters are actually entitled, one is post/humanism, the other one is post/anthropocentrism. But it's also true that the third term of reference, which is post-dualism, has not been engaged fully and needs a deeper reflection. Before entering into this discussion, we should ask another question, which is what kind of dualism is deconstructed by philosophical posthumanism. So here we should clarify that there are many different types of dualisms, and the dualisms itself, themselves, they don't have to be hierarchical. For instance, here there is the example of the Tao that I'm going to address now. So although dualism does not have to be hierarchical, in the history of Western thought, the 2 sides have been placed in a value system, according to which one side would be the positive, the other the negative. Many examples of this type of dualisms. For instance, nature/culture. Already from the ancient Greek tradition, culture would be the plus, nature would be the minus. Female/male. Again, thinking the history of sexism, male would be the plus, female would be the minus. Black and white. In the history of racism, black would be the minus, white would be the plus. In the history of ethnocentrism, the separation between the East and the West, according to which the West would be the plus and the East would be the minus, and all the discourse developed around Orientalism and all the critique of Orientalism by Edward Said. So again, this notion of dualism is not innocent, is not neutral, has been creating politics of discrimination throughout the history of society. And we are addressing this specific type of dualism, which is more clearly a type of dualism that is strict, rigid, and absolute. So we're not talking about the liquid, shifting, and intra-changing form of duality as practiced, for instance, in the Tao. In Taoism, according to Alan Watts, the yin-yang principle is not what we would ordinarily call a dualism. but rather an explicit duality expressing an implicit unity. And so according to the Tao, for instance, one of the most suited metaphor for the all-encompassing dynamic balance is water. You can find this already in the classic text Tao Te Ching, attributed to Lao Tzu. So again, we're talking about a specific type of duality, which is more of a dichotomy, strict and rigid. This type of duality has been deconstructed by philosophical posthumanism, not the shifting, all-encompassing duality, for instance, of the Tao. So what are the genealogical sources of post-dualism in relation to philosophical posthumanism? This onto-epistemological approach, which I would define post-dualism, finds revealing parallels in ancient Asian traditions, such as Buddhism, Jainism, and Advaita Vedanta. Posthumanism, in fact, extends over the boundaries of the academic, technological, and scientific domains, and can be genealogically traced in different types of knowledges and understanding. Currently, non-dualism, which is not the same as post-dualism, but they do share a lot in common, non-dualism is attracting an increasing interest from scholars working on bridging modern knowledge and ancient wisdom. In Western science, for instance, the term is used to refer to an interconnectedness, which, in tune with the posthuman approach, reject Cartesian dualism. What is Cartesian dualism is the strict separation between body and mind. I think, therefore I am. So that's the Cartesian dualism we are referring to. Such an approach of non-duality stands on the path opened by Friedrich with his groundbreaking work entitled The Tao of Physics, which was written in 1975, a while ago, which highlighted the parallels between the worldview of physicists and mystics. This shift has been paired by the rapidly growing interest in mindfulness and meditation in many industrialized countries. So that there is definitely a shift happening in society, and the contemporary attempt to rethink science, technology, and spirituality in a natural cultural continuum is in tune with philosophical posthumanism, according to which spirituality and the tradition of mindfulness becomes a source of insight and understanding. Why? Spirituality refers to a human tendency to conceive existence more extensively than the ordinary perception of individual beings. Spirituality contemplates a non-separation between the inner and the outer worlds, and may culminate in mystical experiences, which offer non-mediated perceptions of transcending. The realm of spirituality can be investigated as one of the genealogies of the posthuman, when posthumanism is approached as a praxis based on experiential learning, in tune with the Buddhist take on the enlightenment, and understanding, wisdom and insight of the connection and the understanding that we can already be divine through a sincere discipline of the body, mind, and spirit, which may eventually manifest the final awakening. So again, it's very interesting to find parallels between, for instance, traditions of the tradition of Buddhism and other traditions, according to which philosophy is not just a theory. Philosophy is a theory and a practice. That's why I like to think of philosophical posthumanism as a praxis and also an experiential learning approach. So the idea that philosophical posthumanism is something that we need to experience, something that we need to manifest in our daily way of existing. Now, if by our ways of existing, by our ways of being, by the way we think, by the way we talk, by the way by what we eat, by how we treat others, so by the way we exist. If, by the way we exist, we can be already divine, according, for instance, to Buddhism, if we can already be gods in the way we live, that is enlightened beings, although in Buddhism God and enlightened being are not synonyms, but let's say if we can be enlightened beings, if we can be gods, can we kill gods? This is a question that we are going to address with a different tradition, which is anti-humanism, and specifically the death of God according to Friedrich Nietzsche. Now let's understand a little more what is anti-humanism. Anti-humanism is another flavor of the posthuman term. Also, anti-humanism is not one, but many. There are different types of anti-humanism. For instance, there is a Marxist anti-humanism, which we are not going to talk about, with Althusser, for instance. We're going to talk a specific take on anti-humanism based on Michel Foucault and the notion of death of man. So according to Michel Foucault, one idea, one concept of, he say man, I would say more in general human, at one point died. This notion of man, according to Foucault, is a notion that was created through the Enlightenment. So the birth of this type of human was born in the European Enlightenment and died with the death of God, according to Nietzsche, and the birth of the overhuman. Now, the notion of the death of man, according to Michel Foucault, is based, again, on the notion of the death of God. So, why, according to Nietzsche, we kill God? And why did Nietzsche proclaim the death of God? This is an important question. Also because it was such an important topic for the whole philosophy of the 20th century. This idea that God has died, that God now is dead. Well, we should underline that when Nietzsche proclaims the death of God, he's referring not only to religion, but also to science. So this idea that we can replace religion with science, which is on some level part of the transhumanist approach, would not be supported by Nietzsche. So again, according to Nietzsche, the idea is not just God in a religious sense, but he referring to any final authority to be revered and blindly accepted. So Nietzsche's God should be intended broadly as any external authority imposing their truth, with capital T, to the individual. More in general, the death of God should be approached as a metaphor to reject any external imposition about our own life, trying to find instead our own individual voices. According to Nietzsche, different perspectives should be respected and cultivated. That's why he's also the one coined the term perspectivism in the Western tradition. So the death of any external truth allows for the birth of the Übermensch, the overhuman, or the fully empowered individual. This is the extraordinary gift that Nietzsche has given us all. Let's now connect anti-humanism and posthumanism and ask if posthumanism supports the death of God. So does posthumanism support the death of God? Posthumanism supports the end of any external truth imposed upon the individual, although the specificities of the death of God, as described by Nietzsche, may not be in line with the mediated approach of posthumanism. Different from anti-humanism, posthumanism does not rely on the death of God, nor, passing through Foucault's approach, on the death of man. In fact, according to Nietzsche, God didn't just die, we have killed him. We, according to Nietzsche, have killed God. Now, if God and man, according to Foucault, are dead, who killed them? Who is this we? Did you kill God? Did you kill the human? This is a very relevant question. For the simple fact that if someone is talking about their deaths, it means that someone has survived. Who is the survivor? The death of God, as well as the death of man, can be seen as a symbolic sacrifice of redemption, which is perceived as not necessary within the posthumanist frame. In this sense, we can talk more properly of the end of any external truth through an individual evolution that does not rely on a violent killing, which would necessarily bring back a vengeance. While anti-humanism is characterized by an oppositional attitude pertaining to the social and cultural agenda in which it developed, more specifically the 60s as a symbolic decade, posthumanism, which developed more clearly in the 90s, is a philosophy of mediation that relocates hegemonic modes of thinking close to resistant ones. None of them are fully dismissed, but they are recognized as functional acts in the historical formation of the notion of the human. So again, although anti-humanism does locate itself in the death of God and connecting to this death also to the death of the human, posthumanism does not. There is not a violent killing as a symbolic birth of posthumanism. Conclusions. In this talk, we've accessed the notion of the posthuman divine according to 4 different schools of thoughts. Specifically, we have reflected upon the question, are we becoming God, or are we becoming gods, to the transhumanist approach and its call for human enhancement. Following, we've discussed the question, are we playing God, or are we playing gods, in relation to human genetic manipulation from a bioconservative perspective. The point that we may already be divine, the point that we may already be God, or the point that we may already be gods, has been sustained within the post-dualistic frame of philosophical posthumanism. Lastly, we have hinted to the question, are we killing God, or are we killing gods, from an anti-humanist perspective that, based on the death of God, according to Friedrich Nietzsche, can be expanded to the politics of deep ecology and the Anthropocene, asking, for example, the related question, are we killing non-human gods in the era of the Anthropocene, when thousands of species go extinct every year because of human action? So again, going to a post-anthropocentric, post-anthropomorphic God, in that sense, are we killing gods with all the species that get extinct every year because of human action? That's an important question as well. All these questions and answers cannot be addressed in separation, but in conjunction, as the posthuman paradigm shift develops in unique ways, finding new voices and interpretation to the realm of the divine. Are we gods? Are we becoming God? Are we playing God? Are we killing gods? And if we have the power to kill immortal gods, who are we? We can only answer to this question by going back to the first question. So if we have the power to kill immortal gods, are we immortal gods? Well, if we are gods, we should start behaving as such, thinking of ourselves not as separate mortal entities, but as generative, infinite entities in search for enlightenment. And still, who is this we? Can we become enlightened as a species? God, in the biblical Exodus, would answer, I am who I am. So we can only reply, we are who we are. I would like to thank you for your enlightened attention. This is the end of part 2 and the end of my talk on the Posthuman Divine. I would love to connect with all of you. This is my website, theposthuman.org. Please feel free to write me, to connect with me. That's the best part of existence, to connect with people who want to talk about important issues such as the Posthuman Divine. This is my book. It's coming out in May 2018, published by Bloomsbury on the topic of philosophical posthumanism. And I would like again to thank so much the Fondazione Bruno Kessler for offering me the opportunity to talk about this important topic of the Posthuman Divine. Thank again to Boris, Valeria, Isabella, and thanks to all of you there. I can't wait for the Q&A, and I can't wait to develop more this discussion. Thank you so much, and I would say posthuman blessings.